Megan here from Crystal Lake Public Library, and I'm going to share with you today a recipe for zucchini chocolate cake. This is a great recipe to use up all those extra zucchinis maybe you have laying around, or maybe a friend came and left one for you from their garden. So this recipe, the full recipe, takes 3 cups of grated zucchini. So one of those big zucchinis is perfect for this. I am using an 8x8 cake pan. So I'm halving the recipe as it's written because my family doesn't need a 9x13 cake. So it's very easy to half it or just go with the full cake. It's delicious either way. So we're gonna start with butter and oil, and you want that either at room temperature or, as I did, melted. I'm doing this by hand. The recipe calls for using a stand mixer, but I'm going to do it by hand. It's just as easy and a little less cleanup in my case. So you're going to start with the butter and oil, and then we're going to put in the sugar and blend that all together. Once that's nice and creamed, we're going to add a little bit of vanilla, baking powder, baking soda, salt, and the egg. So give that a nice mix if you're choosing to do it by hand. If you're doing it with the stand mixer, you'll mix until it's creamed together nicely. So then we'll add vanilla. I've pre-measured out my dry ingredients here. So I have salt, powdered sugar, or not powdered sugar, baking powder and baking soda. That right in. Crack an egg. If you're doing the full recipe, it's 2 eggs. And then we'll give that a stir till it's nice and combined. And again, still nice and creamed. You don't want any separation from the eggs and the cream. So keep stirring until nice and smooth, scraping down the sides as needed. So next, to make this cake extra rich, we're going to add in sour cream. So the recipe calls for alternating the sour cream with the flour. So you can start with either one. And I'm going to do a little bit of flour first. I'm going to stir that until combined. Scraping down the sides again as needed. And you should preheat the oven to 325. This cake bakes on a lower temp. And then we're going to do a nice pourable frosting on the top, which is just the perfect addition to this cake. So once the flour is creamed in, I'm going to add maybe half of the sour cream. Depends how many times you want to go through, if you want to space it out a little more. So combine that sour cream until it's nice and incorporated. Then next, another portion of the flour. And for my half a cake, I'm just doing it twice. If you're doing the full recipe, you might want to do 3 increments. So combine that flour until it's all mixed through and no more dry spots. And then we'll finish with the sour cream before we move on to the next round of ingredients. I really enjoy this recipe because it uses those zucchinis that are so abundant in summer, and it's a little extra healthy adding that, or makes me feel like it's a little bit healthy. Makes the cake a little justifiable when you're adding your treat. So incorporate that sour cream. That blends in nice and smooth. It's getting to be a pretty thick batter, but because of the zucchini and the water content in zucchini, it really moistens up this cake very nicely. So So then we're going to add the cocoa powder. And the full recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup. And you can sift it or you can scoop it, however you prefer. Just be careful with that cocoa powder because it is messy. So once you have that added, stir it until it's completely combined. Nice and slow, incorporating it in. And I have grated my zucchini beforehand, and this recipe is nice because you don't need to get the extra moisture out. You can just grate the zucchini and dump it right in. You don't need to pat it or strain it beforehand, which I also appreciate because that is not one of my favorite steps in cooking with zucchini. I find it a little tedious. So I've incorporated my cocoa powder. It's nice and rich. And then we're going to put all that zucchini in. And you're going to fold the zucchini in. So nice and slowly folding it in gently. And the last step after that is nicely folded in. We're going to add some chocolate chips. Full recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup. And you'll fold those in as well. And I've pre-sprayed my pan, so once this is all ready to go, I'm going to pop it in the oven. Fold those chocolate chips in, and the batter will be ready. Now this bakes for about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on your oven, because we're cooking it at such a low temperature. So I'm going to pop this in, get it in the oven, and I'll meet you back after it's cooked and cooled and show you how to do the pourable, very easy frosting. Hi! So I have finished baking my cake and it is still cooling. The recipe calls for you to make the frosting while the cake is still warm. So mine is slightly still warm. So I've put my butter in a pan, and then you add milk, any kind of milk, and a little bit of cocoa powder. And then you put that on the stove and you melt it together, stirring frequently until the butter is melted and everything's combined. Then you take it off the heat and you add in the powdered sugar. So I'm gonna go melt this together and I'll show you how I pour it over and serve this delicious cake. So I have heated up my frosting. I've added my powdered sugar and whisked it until there are no more lumps. And then literally all you have to do is pour this right over the top. So pour it all around. It will thicken as it cools. And that's it. That is it for this cake, this chocolate zucchini cake with pourable chocolate frosting. I hope you make this and enjoy it, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.